Fancy seeing you here. Welcome to Module 0 of the Protection and Malefica Rune Soup course. We're doing something, as you can plainly tell, a little bit different this time, which is there's going to be a couple of modules in the course that are publicly available. There's a few reasons for this. The biggest one being particularly when we are talking about protection magic and so on. I don't know if you've noticed, but the world isn't great, and there's a lot of trauma that needs addressing one way or the other, and a whole kind of big subset of protection magic is around that kind of thing. And so I just sort of deemed it hopefully useful for some of this material, particularly like the core praxis that I'm going to recommend for Module 0, to be more widely available than just the membership, right? So that's why you're watching this, maybe, unless you are a premium member, in which case you're watching this because welcome to the Protection and Malefica course. This is your Module 0. Now, let me tell you about Module 0s. Typically, we begin the course with, as it says there, the preliminary metaphysics of what we're going to be talking about, right? And we also get to do a bit of shopping. So this is the one where the people who are going to embark on the course come to their first understanding of the terrain of said course and to kind of situate themselves and start thinking about the deeper or wider implications of a particular magical practice, Protection and Malefica in this case, right? So that's what we're going to do in this module, and it's a standalone in the sense that if you're not going to do the course, completely fine, obviously. There's still a whole bunch of worthwhile material in this video, and also the associating, which you'll find linked below if you've just found this on YouTube, the associated post page, public post page at runesoup.com. So let's jump in. We're going to begin by talking about the shape of the course, because I did put these two words, Protection and Malefica, together, and I'll explain that as we move into it. And then the goals and outcomes. This one, again, is going to be a little bit different. It's quite practical focused. Most of them are, but this one especially so. And then we're going to talk about Materia, which is very often everyone's favorite part of Module 0, which is where you get to go and buy cool shit if you want. Then we're going to do, and this is the key reason I think for making this module publicly available, I'm going to talk you through the process of emotional clearing and why we would begin a Protection and Malefica course with it. And then I'm going to point you in the direction of additional resources and material to do with Protection and Malefica magic in general. First, the member stuff, so that'll be in the members area of runesoup.com, and then the publicly available stuff, some of which is at runesoup.com and some of which is elsewhere. So let's jump on in. I want to talk to you about the shape of the course. Now, as I said, I put these two terms together, Protection and Malefica, and on at first glance, they appear to be opposites. And they're not. But they're also not the same thing, right? And to think about one, and this is I mean, I'm sure many of you are aware of this, but if there is an area, and goodness, is this saying something, where online magical discourse is at its weakest, and that's really saying something, it is around cursing and Malefica, and whether it's a witch's culture or like just, it's off the chain amazing, right? And I think a big part of the reason for that is the metaphysics in which such things happen or don't are frequently unexamined or insufficiently examined, perhaps, right? So I did Bayo Akomolafe's course at the end of last year called We Will Dance with Mountains. And at the beginning of it, he posed the question, what does it mean to fall into sickness? And it's a wonderful way to describe it, right? There's no blame allocation with falling into sickness for a start. But for people who, if you consider the something like type 2 diabetes and so on, what does it mean that it is very difficult to live in a world where food is, so-called food is not healthy for you? What does it mean to live in a world where that's there? Not even just like, hey, fatty, put the cake down, but more, how do you, we have had a century of these kind of really dangerous non-food products being put into the food supply. So there are stories of like the ill effects of market economies and so on. Like, what does it mean to fall into sickness, right? And if you have fallen into sickness or misfortune, where do you allocate blame? And this is the whole protection and Malefica thing. Like, the rules for cursing often rely, or assume rather, that everyone's speaking the same language when it comes to the idea of blame and personal rights and what can and can't be justified and what's too far and so on. And that's just not the case. It's actually way more interesting than that, which is, what does it mean to fall into sickness, right? I threw some cards before putting this module together, Lenormand cards, because that's how I do. And what came out is like, what do I need to convey? What am I not conveying in this module that I need to convey? And it was going through pain invites you to sit with the proper functioning of the universe. So if someone hurt you, are they having, are they being bullied at work? Like, if someone says something horrible to you, what's going on in their life? Doesn't justify or excuse it. It opens up the question of not how to intervene, but where. So if someone is reacting from a place of trauma and it upsets you, are you, and this is an open question, I'm not saying what the answer is, are you therefore justified because you are reacting from a place of trauma when you curse them, right? So the metaphysics of it is the most interesting part, I think. And it's where both the protection and Malefica stuff blossom. So as you can see, the course is going to be split fairly evenly, 2 modules each, into 3 sections. The first section is protection, because that is for everyone. And even if you don't think it works, it does, and try it and you'll see what I mean. And then metaphysics is where typically we begin and end the course with it, but it does swing and hinge on it. So there's going to be 2, like the metaphysics of intervening is going to be the middle of the course. And then the end of the course, the final 2, is Malefica. Now, I think you should watch those modules anyway, but I've done this with a few courses before where you need like a metaphor of a train or the tube, for instance, and you get to decide which station you step off at, and that's perfectly fine, right? Like when the course was announced, there were a few members who were like, I'm literally never going to do Malefica. Cool. I would still say that is a perfectly valid position to take. It's maybe even the most valid, is in from a philosophical perspective. So you can kind of like get off the train before we get to doing Malefica. And that's kind of what I meant. So this is the general shape of the course. And again, I'm just going to give you some more open questions, particularly around Malefica, as to why it is structured that way. So is Malefica, is it just cursing? This is the other thing that's uninterrogated when people spew their takes on TikTok or Twitter or something, right? Is it just cursing? Or here's another example. If you were doing magic with demons, like grimoiric demons, even if your goal is quote unquote good, is that Malefica? And vice versa, if you're cursing someone with angels, is that Malefica? Right? If you were, and again, they're open questions, so certainly not going to solve them in module 0, but in a module 0 is when when you sit with some of these questions and come to your own kind of like preliminary positions on them. Let's certainly not say conclusions, because that's not a great word at the best of times. So is it cursing if you're praying to remove someone from your life and that removal benefits both them and you, right? But you're making a decision for someone. So obviously a good example there would be like a on again, off again toxic relationship. And you know it's better, but you're making a decision for someone else. It's thorny, and that's kind of the point, right? Is counter magic malefic? Is there a volume or amplitude of response where it becomes malefic? Especially if someone's trying to like kill you with magic. If you say reverse and send all of that back to them, everything that they sent to you, are you prepared to? Do you dislike that person enough for that to be with you? Right? So it's, especially if it works. So even if you were the victim of said curse magic and you spin it back on them and they die, as this is the extreme example, right? How do you feel about that? Have you just cursed someone, right? And again, open questions. You have your answers to this, or as I said, your preliminary assumptions. But it's not, it's more interesting than it appears. And it's more interesting than it appears even if you don't think cursing works at all, right? More interesting than it appears. And also, and this is the final one that comes under Malefica, typically when people, and this is a burn, but it's fair, typically when people get to the point of cursing someone else, their life isn't in a good way, right? And I watched some TV show, I can't remember what, like you look at someone's life and it's so bad, you can't tell. Cursing them and giving them more misfortune would be like adding more mums to Facebook, is kind of how I heard it on a TV show about a decade ago, and I thought that was funny. But like how do you know which of your matches contributed to the dumpster fire that was already burning? And that's again kind of important from a magical improvement perspective, like a learning intelligence or a learning metabolism. Like what are you doing that works versus what you're doing that isn't? And these are the kind of open questions around Malefica. Like, how do you tell who or what did it, if anything, given that when you're in that state, you're typically with a lot of trauma and a lot of anger, and that generates a whole lot of cross conditions in your life anyway. So that's kind of, that's sort of the open questions about it. There's a final one that is from this coming up quote from Dr. Joe Dispenza from his book. Sorry, it's a wall of text that I'm covering. Look at that. How fortunate for you. I'm going to read it to you. This is Dr. Joe Dispenza describing a HeartMath Institute study that showed that basically, and this is a big part of Dr. Dispenza's kind of approach, is that intending on its own doesn't quote unquote move the needle from a magical perspective. And holding positive emotions on their own doesn't move the needle much either. But it is, and this, we do this with intention groups amongst the premium members anyway. But the combination of using, and the HeartMath Institute has its own kind of approaches for coming into that that resonance. There's heart focus coherence is how it's written up there, right? So you come into that heart focus coherence, and then you intend for something. And what they found, the group that statistically produced the significant changes in the conformation or shape of the DNA are the ones that held both heightened emotions and clear objectives in alignment. And that's when they were able to produce the intended effect. Now, here's where I'm including it, or why I'm including it in Module 0. In this case, thinking positive emotions and having the intention to wind DNA versus unwind DNA, right? So this is the final Malefica question. If I think happy thoughts and intend to stop your heart, what's going on there? Now, typically that sort of, and it's not, I'm being facetious in that description, but more specifically, if I come into resonance with quote unquote positive emotions with an ill intent, what's going on there? And especially given that will work. Like unwinding DNA is typically what happens when you age. That's an oversimplification, but DNA damage is associated with aging. So think happy thoughts and age someone. Interesting, right? And that's kind of why the two of these things are put together. It's the same approach. Interestingly, I did in the first part of my shamanic training last year, Alberto said, and it's because he was told this from his Kero teachers as well, that what you do, particularly with remote healings, is you pull someone's field into the area where you're going to be working on it. And the guy who first taught Alberto says, now you do this for healing, but it's the same process if you want to curse someone, like pulling their field in it instead of healing it, damaging it, right? So this is kind of what that HeartMath thing is about. And it's why, from a technical perspective, as in the deployment of practical enchantment, protection and Malefica actually have to go, I think anyway, actually have to go together as a single course. And these are the goals and outcomes of said course, right? Now, as I said, it's going to be more practical outcomes based, and in the sense that it's going to be more individual outcomes based, because I want you to walk away with and have for the rest of your life a minimum number of credible techniques that work in this essential area. And a big one, and it's the subtext for module 0, and I would like that, and why I want it further afield, is your own diagnostic techniques for curses and cross conditions, because there are all manner of steps to working out what's going on and then working out if someone threw something at you, right? And the beginning one is check your space weather, because it's very often that. Also, shit happens, you know? But one of them is, and you can also kind of get caught in that loop of thinking about cross conditions and so on. So we're going to do sort of at the beginning of the course, diagnostic techniques for curses and cross conditions. And the practical material in this module is like 60% of that. So that's what anyone can have if they want, right? You're also going to have your own protective plant allies and ways of activating them. And that's going to be a minimum of 3. And I'm not going to be more specific about that. I'm not going to pick your plant allies for you, because particularly for animists, you want that bioregional response. I live in southern Tasmania, so eucalypt, for instance, is very good for protective magic, because it's very good for banishing magic. So you don't live, well, you might, but you don't live in southern Tasmania. Your local bioregion is going to have those allies for you, and it's almost, no, it is, in fact, it's not almost, it is more valuable to learn the process of coming into relation with those allies, so that you might move from Norway to Barbados, right? So you're still going to want, that process of coming into relation with local plant allies is a thing I want you to take away. And you'll get 3 of them out of it if you do the work, right? Your own recipes, similarly, and obviously these two are kind of related, for binding procedures, war water, and protective spirit water, kind of like making your own Florida water, but different. Put it that way. Your own blue grimoire approach to calling up spirits for Malefica. Again, that's an optional one, but we're going to look quite... we're with the blue grimoires in this course when it comes to the sort of European grimoire magic, not the earlier ones. And 5, I guarantee 5, separate techniques for counter-cursing, uncrossing, reputational magic, vengeance, and cursing. So that's kind of what... The course is broken into those 3 areas I mentioned, but then it's going to be outcomes based over the duration of that course. And that's what we're going to be doing. Materia. This is the bit. All right. As you can see there, you need a pendulum, a magnet, fancy paper, which if you do your sigils, you know what it is, but like nice sort of parchment paper stuff. Playing cards, definitely not fancy, just any old playing cards. You get them at supermarkets these days. Aluminium pie plates, or if you're somewhere like Australia or New Zealand, they might not be called that, but like the sort of barbecue plates, things that are still made out of aluminium. And blood jasper, the one that you can see in the second photo there, is dragon's blood jasper and an engraver. You don't need the engraver, but I included 2 versions there. And I got both of them from Etsy, so don't necessarily freak out about it. But if you're going to go down the small pendant route, this is a protective thing to be used with some of the grimoire magic towards the end of the course. If you are skilled at doing things like engraving and you want it, or if you would like to learn how to, that's part of the process, but there are workarounds so you don't have to actually engrave in it, which means you could use a smaller piece that you can wear, that you can see there on the left. Returning to the magnets, which you can see at the top. And every time we get to the materia part of a course, people ask, it's like you can't fuck this up, right? They'll ask, is this okay? Can I use this? Can I use that? The first time for the emotional clearing process that I'm about, this is what you need the magnets for. When I started doing it, the only magnet we had in the house was a Las Vegas fridge magnet that Greg Carwood from the Higher Side Chat sent me, and it worked a treat. But moving on with the process, I picked some other ones. So on the left, the magnets you can see there, that's some hematite. I think they're just hematite magnets. I think I got them from eBay. And on the right, those are some 3M brand rare earth magnets, which I got from Amazon, but we already had because I live on a little farm and we were using them in the shed. So that's literally when people freak out for the look on eBay and Amazon for the magnets, and look on eBay and Etsy for the jasper, unless you happen to know places. But that's all I'm going to give you, because part of the process... Oh, actually, I will also say this about the pendulum. Same thing. Etsy and eBay are good for finding pendulums when it comes to what pendulum can I use. Can I use this? Can it be made out of crystals? Can I use a crystal one? Can I use a chakra one? Can I blah, 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 blah. In the nicest possible way, I don't care, because part of the process is finding these things for yourself. The gathering of materia is a cornerstone skill of practical enchantment. Now, I know people, especially if they're new, don't want to get it wrong, because they think it's like school and you've showed up with the wrong book. You've showed up with your biology book to French class or something. It's not like that. You will know. Just drop in and find it, right? And yeah, find the one you like. Don't spend too much on it. Like I said, 3M magnets. I do a lot of my shopping on, like eBay, stuff sent from China and so on, right? That's how it is. But these are the things you're going to need if you're going to be joining us on the course. If you're not, if you're just here for Module 0 and whatever the free stuff is, a fridge magnet or buy some magnets if you would like. And you will be needing them for emotional clearing. Let me give you the why of the emotional clearing. Oh, look at me blocking. Again, fortunately for you, I'll move a bit so you can like read around me on these slides. But fortunately for you, I'm actually going to be telling you what's on the slides. Right, so let me begin with the statement that Malefica is less prevalent than you fear, but more prevalent than you hope. Since, you know, as I mentioned, the shamanic practitioner stuff, it's not with every client, but it's with more than you think. And it's very typical, especially when you factor in, it might not actually have happened to that person, but it's the chances of it happening to one of your lineages is 100%. And that's frequently what happens, right? And especially when you're dealing with the spirit world, the understanding of time isn't great. Well, it actually is great. Ours isn't great, is a better way of saying that. So there's stuff from 400 years ago that can be impacting your lineage now. And there's part of the process of doing that shamanic energy work is clearing it. We don't necessarily do that in Module 0, but if that's for you, book a session. That'll be fine. Crossed conditions and trapped emotions present in near identical ways. It's kind of like the main reason. So when you start to worry if a whole bunch of bad stuff happens to you and you start to think, am I cursed, or is this some other kind of crossed conditions? And we'll have definitions for those kind of things as we move into the course. They present in near identical ways, to the extent that you almost don't even need to determine whether it's trapped emotions or some other kind of crossed conditions. Just do some emotional clearing and watch as you get a whole big bunch of clear up, right? Especially as cursing in particular often relies on activating energetic imprints, is what we call it in my kind of shamanic practitioner lineage. But cursing in general often relies on activating trapped emotions or energetic imprints, finding those kind of like weak spots or rough spots in the field, right? So it's almost like before you even diagnose at the level of cross conditions, there's work that you can do that can help that. And also the world is pretty shit right now. And again, we'll be discussing this in the course, but how do you think someone saying horrible things about you on the internet or flipping you off in traffic has an energetic imprint? We are in an age or an era now where nurses are calling for the death of some of their patients. It's the level of hostility and is like we haven't experienced, and we all have trauma from it rather. And so, and that kind of stuff, that kind of pain stays in the field and stays in the body until you clear it, until you release it. So this is sort of why I think this, everyone needs to be able to do some kind of emotional clearing, hence the public Module 0, right? And the best kind of like baseline for it is, I think anyway, the Emotion Code by Dr. Bradley Nelson. If you have a system of releasing trapped emotions or emotional clearing that you already like and use, feel free to use it. Why this is good is all the stuff is available legally. Like you'll find the link to the PDF of his book. It's available through people he's trained and so on. We're not doing anything dodgy by sharing the PDF of the book. If you are into it, you should probably buy it because it's a thick book. There's a lot. It's mostly testimonials. It's one of those kind of like things. It's how it's formatted. It doesn't matter. But this is a really good baseline because you can start from zero. And when I say zero, I mean not even thinking this will work even a little bit. And you can read the book and you can get your Las Vegas fridge magnet or whatever it happens to be and do the process and you'll start to see results. So I was sort of looking around for, and one of my helping spirits in sessions quite likes this system for that reason, that it's available for anyone, regardless of like skill level or so on. So all you need is a PDF that's below. Dr. Nelson also has a video series on YouTube explaining the complete practice of like releasing trapped emotions. He's also got an app which has the chart. I'll explain the process in the next slide, but called Discover Healing. Get the free version. The paid version is very expensive. It's like $27 a month, but the stuff that's in it is not, at least yet, I guess is a nice way of saying it, that valuable. The free version, you just need the sort of chart to hand so that you're locating where the trapped emotion is, right? So this is a good universally available baseline, and why we're sort of beginning the course with it, if you're moving further or progressing further with us, is that you build those kinesiological skills, so body testing, muscle testing, that will be useful as we move into the course and begin diagnosing things like cross conditions, because as the excellent book famously has it, the body keeps the score. So finding a way to hear what is going on from a cross condition, curse, or trapped emotion perspective is a big part of what we're going to do fairly presently if you carry on with the course. So that's why emotion code, you find all the details below this video depending on where you're watching it. But I'm going to give you a quick overview of the process. Begin with gratitude for the releasing process and a prayer for assistance. So that's kind of like be in ceremony is a way I would say that. But you experience gratitude and then a prayer for assistance. I don't care to whom or what you pray, but it's about stepping into that mode, right? And then you establish a body testing baseline, and we'll go over that. You'll understand it from the course, from the book, and then we'll also discuss it a bit more as how it relates to protection and Malefica as we move into the first section of the course. But you're basically calibrating your muscle testing so that you can get your yes/no questions. And then you determine if there are any trapped emotions that can be released at this time. There usually is. And then you use the chart to locate them because you've calibrated the muscle testing. And then you run a magnet down your governing meridian. So from basically the middle of the forehead, back of the head, and down your back as far as you can go. And of course, if you're performing it on someone else, it's a lot easier to go the whole way down the spine. And you do that 3 times as part of the releasing of the process. And you repeat those steps until you get a no on trapped emotions that can be released at this time. So you ask, are there any trapped emotions that can be released at this time? Now, the first time you do that, it's basically going to be a yes. It might not be, though. There might actually be other stuff that's more front of body rather than front of mind that needs to be dealt with. And typically you get about 4 or so done in a session before. And what happens to me anyway, because I've been doing it for a while now, is that it might be 4 or 5, but after the final kind of like magnet slide release, even before I go to do the muscle testing to work out if there are any more trapped emotions that can be released at this time, it feels like I'm done. Like that, I'm done for that session. So it's not particularly time consuming, right? You read the book, and releasing trapped emotions on a daily basis will take under 10 minutes. And we'll talk about, and I'll tell you now, but we mentioned at the end of this video, try it for 30 days. If you've got like under 10 minutes a day for 30 days, and you will feel so. And again, I almost want people who think there is absolutely no way this will do anything. I want them to do it more than the people who are like, yeah, this sounds really cool. Because even something as deceptively simple as this you do that for 30 days, and the sneaking suspicion of cross conditions or whatever it happens to be is gone. You will feel lighter, clearer, more in flow, and that's a big part of protection in the first place, right? So additional stuff to begin the course with, beginning in the members area, the Ansible room that we're going to be using is protection and cleansing tech. If you don't know what the Ansible is, it is the private end-to-end encrypted communications platform that premium members get access to. And we like to crash one of the rooms in it, the one that most closely matches the material each course. So if you're on the Ansible and you're not in that room, that's the room we're going to be talking about, at least the first, I guess, half of the course. And then there is another room, you probably work it out, that will be crashing for the final third. Bands of Protection, Right Transmission, that was delivered in December, and you'll find that video in the bonus member material area. Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, which is one of the modules in the Ancestors and Spirits course. Late and New World Grimoires, which is a module in the Grimoires course. Any of the home protection material from the Custodianship course, and revisit the Invocation of the Watchers and the beginnings of that circle magic from the Angels course. That one's less urgent. You can come back to that. We'll be using that towards the end of the course. But this is the member material that you may want to revisit as we begin this one. Public material. So this is for both members and non-members. Stuff that's found at Rune Soup or around the internet. The Archetype of the Witch, which is a podcast episode of This Jungian Life, which came out Q4 of last year sometime from memory. And I want you to listen to that one because if you're familiar with Rune Soup at all, one of my long-running rants is the sort of mainstream Western understanding of witchcraft and that whole we are the daughters of the blah, 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 you couldn't burn, or as a feminist position, but particularly a middle-class feminist position. The archetype of the witch can contain that, but the archetype of the witch is so much bigger than that. And in the non-white world, witch is pejorative, and witches are often, in fact, most of the time, not even human, right? So you're dealing with beings. And so it's a really good talk about the archetype of the witch and how, from a Jungian perspective, like from a shadow perspective, the parts of us as a person and as a society that we spit off become this. So it's a really good way of situating this kind of wider idea of the archetype of the witch, because we are talking about Malefica, which is one of the key powers of the witch. So it's a really good discussion. Have a listen to that. The Petit Albert and the Grand Grimoire, there are versions of it available online. They'll be linked up below. You can also get paperback versions of them, or you can get printed versions of them. I'm not especially bothered which ones you get. It's not essential. You don't need to get any. You can literally use the online ones if you want. But Grand Grimoire and Petit Albert. The Emotion Code, which we've just discussed, and again, PDF, and you're fine. Psalm 91, I mean, I can link it up, but you can find Psalm 91. This is like free public material because this is probably one of the most popular broad spectrum protective prayers, and really, really useful. If you are absolute rank beginner at magic, a single white candle and Psalm 91 said at least once is good stuff, right? And you will find at the Rune Soup post page, the public one, if you're just watching this on YouTube, click through. You will also find a protective prayer for going on a journey, modified from Scott's Discovery of Witchcraft, and you'll also find a 19th century Russian curse breaker, which I rather like. So I tried to give for Module 0 the beginnings of broad spectrum stuff. And for members, of course, there's additional material to go over before or during or not at all when we begin the course. So next steps, and this is the only slide where I'm like, oh, I'm missing the fun part of the meme. But if I move my head like this, because I was going to call the course Protect Attack because of this once classic meme. Anyway, everyone do 30 days of releasing trapped emotions. I recommend the emotion code if you don't have another system for it. Check out the free material that goes for everyone, obviously. And join us for the rest of the course. If you are interested in this, you just join the membership and you get access to everything, and that'll be linked up below. And if you are joining us, do all of the as above. Source your materia. Don't freak out about it. Enjoy it. Enjoy how garish some pendulums really are. And complete the optional reading that I mentioned in a member email about a week ago, if you are going to. And that's it. Again, welcome to the course. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. See you in the next one.